Welcome back to Founder Value Unlocked. I'm your host, Ross Marshall. And in the past 2 episodes, we've been unpacking what it actually takes to build a business that can scale sustainably, not just fast, but properly. In episode 1, we explored Finovate's fractional finance philosophy and their 5C framework. It's a practical model designed to help founders understand the real drivers behind these outcomes that they're searching for. Then, in episode 2, we shifted into inward expansion, unpacking what happens when global companies outgrow fragmented systems, expensive EOR solutions, and operational complexity. But underneath both of those conversations is the following reality. Finovate exists to relentlessly unlock value. And that is precisely what today's episode is going to be about. Episode 3 is all about client wins and success stories. And we're going to be delving a little bit deeper. We're going to be having conversations with real impact makers within the company that are helping drive these outcomes on a day-to-day basis. This is episode 3, Client Wins and Success Stories. Joining me first is Robert Bougas. He's the director and head of advisory services at Finovate. Robert sits incredibly close to the heartbeat of the client experience at Finovate, leading sales, customer advocacy, and fractional finance across South Africa and the UK. But more than numbers and strategy, Robert's work is really about helping founders regain clarity, confidence, and momentum in their businesses. Robert, welcome to Founder Value Unlocked.
Thank you, Ross. It's a pleasure to be here. It's great to be here.
So if you could just very, very quickly and briefly give us an insight as to how your day-to-day looks at Finovate and what your role entails exactly.
So I'm pretty much on the sales side of things, that client success from the start to the end. So I pretty much handle the sales side on the South African and the UK side. A part of that also pretty much running the advisory side. So we've got amount of teams, making sure that those teams operate as they should. From a client perspective, that entire client journey from the start of having that discovery call up until the end, whenever that is.
That's brilliant. Yeah. So today we're talking client wins and success stories. It's monumental. It's very, very important in a business. And I would like to ask you, what does success look like for you personally? And then what does success look like for Finovate?
I think it's very similar. But at the end of the day, success from a Finovate perspective is the success of our clients. So we like to operate on a win-win-win situation. Must be a win for our clients, must be a win for our staff, and a win for Finovate from a commercial perspective. So I would say that is a win from a Finovate perspective. And from a personal perspective, I would say I have a bunch of team members within the advisory side, making sure that they operate as they should, and that there's personal development on each of those staff members. They have a journey, a roadmap that they want to fulfill, and kind of from a personal development perspective. So make sure that we kind of walk that road with them.
I understand that you often have close contact with founders and businesses and people that are wanting to expand and grow. And so I'd like to know, what generally is the emotional state of these people when you have to get in touch with them or when you have to walk them through the process? How do the guys feel?
Like you can imagine, any business owner, there's very good operational or with deal making, but finances is normally the one that lacks. So around that, we've created our kind of intellectual property, if I can put it like that, a system or a process of how we analyze the status of that client's financial department. And this is around the 5C diagnostics, and which is quite interesting over the last few months, I would say. We've kind of been able to gather this 5C diagnostics average score over multiple clients. I would say looking at the last 100 to 200 clients, we're starting to create this database of what is standard norm or benchmark out there. And we're talking about clients between 20 and 100 million rand in revenue. What does that finance department look like? And I can say, like, if you look at the scores, it is below average. I think the average is about 46, 47%. So it becomes quite interesting when you get a new client coming in. You can actually say, okay, against benchmarking, you're actually above or below the average, which becomes quite an interesting conversation.
That's incredible. And you mentioned now the 5C Diagnostic, and I'm sure you're very, very involved there. So I wonder, can you walk us through again, remind us of those 5 Cs? And then maybe you've got a client success story that was built off of what you're going to talk about right now. And I'd love to hear some of those success stories, maybe a moment where you felt incredibly proud or like you contributed on a meaningful level.
Yeah, sure. So the 5C Diagnostics is pretty much a system or process that we've created on our understanding of how the financial department should run. It creates the opportunity to ask the right questions. Like, a great CFO is asked the right questions. And it kind of helps you formulate the discussion points, thinking forward and not just looking backwards. So that was the basis of how and why we kind of use the 5C Diagnostics to do the advisory work we do. So obviously the 5C Diagnostics starts somewhere and it ends somewhere as well, and it kind of loops back, but it starts at commercials. So your commercials is pretty much your unit economics, what drives the business. If you think of, I love to ask clients, where are they going in the next 5 years? And they always give me a number of revenue. So they would say from 10 million to 100 million or 50 million. So they want to 5x their business in the next 5 years. But then you go a step deeper and say, okay, let's say it's a product business. So then you start asking the questions like, how many product do you need to sell to get from 10 million to 50 million? At what margin? So, for example, I have a client that operates in the retail and manufacturing space, quite a big business. They do about 20 million. And they import from India and they sell locally. And they have these different stores. I think they have about 5 stores. And they have a little bit of online sales. And I was, like I just told you, I asked the same question, where do they want to go? So they want to go from 20 to 30 million. Then you start asking questions on, okay, I understand, I can see by the unit economics, 80% of your revenue makes out store sales and 20% makes on online sales. So what is the margin that you make online versus store sales? Couldn't really answer the question. So we look at the analysis, go into that, and we actually realized from a profitability perspective, online sales were making more bottom line versus store sales. And then you can actually go to cash flow, but setting up new stores actually takes a big chunk of your cash flow. Yep. If you think of deposits for rental, staff that needs to be included in that, stores. So setting up new stores takes a lot of cash. Imagine you can put that chunk of cash that you needed for opening a new store and put that in your marketing strategy, focusing on the ideal client. So that all is as discussion points that came out of the commercials. And based on the analysis, the client's feedback was, now I need to grow to 30 million, so I need to open up more stores. But after looking at that and kind of showing the data behind the decision, not just making a decision, we actually directed the client from this thinking of, I need to open up more stores, to actually, no, but you need to focus online. Doing online sales, because one, you're going to have a better impact on your profitability, and it's going to be less cash. So that's one of the examples of what the impact commercials made on the discussion point. So commercials is very much the most, in most cases, that's the one that's really beneficial for most owners, and that's a lot of the times the data that's missing.
So, Robert, it seems to me like at Finovate, you guys are asking the right questions. It seems like you guys are asking the clients the right questions, and it seems like this has led to a lot of success. I know you've just been on a trip to the UK, and like I always say, I'm the dumb, uninformed person that doesn't know, maybe just someone that is watching, a new founder that is watching. What does that trip look like for you, and what does it look like on an operational level for you? How do you engage with these clients? And is there another story maybe just recently that you experienced by going to the UK? It's obviously a totally different space, different market, different environment that you can tie into what you've just shared about client success stories.
Yeah, I think the UK trip was a great success. It was good to have some conversations that will lead to another one. I think at the end of the day, the business model is exactly the same. We want a strategic finance unlocked. Doesn't matter the jurisdiction. So the discussion points are very much similar. I think the only element that might change inside the 5C Diagnostics is compliance because of the jurisdiction difference. But at the end of the day, it's the same output, same kind of questions that's asked, and doesn't matter if you're South Africa or the UK. It's actually quite interesting. Like you see the same problems all around the 5C diagnostics. So, well, in the UK chip specifically, the type of clients we were talking about was actually accounting firms that wanted to have some more insights on how to actually grow a department in the advisory space. Because what we see on the UK side specifically is that there's a lot of staff that can do compliance, but none of them is actually open to actually moving into the advisory space because they feel uncomfortable. And I think from a resource capacity as well, they're quite constrained. So, and we all know South Africa has a massive amount of great talent and also capacity. So that becomes very interesting conversations on how to actually grow your accounting firm into an advisory firm. And we ourselves, Finovate has done that. We've been established for 12 years, started off as an accounting firm, transitioned into an advisory firm. So we've done that exercise. Yeah, so having these discussions with the UK business owners that wants to make that transition, they just love the idea of I can take 400 clients to 100 clients and just focus on the 100 clients. And that just opens up so much capacity within my staff.
I understand. I'd like to know, I want to go a little bit more personal now. I'd like to go into your journey. And I want to know what have you learned from doing all of these trips and by helping and offering these services to clients? What have you discovered in yourself that is a strength and that is useful in some of these conversations for you specifically? Think about your whole journey at Finovate. I don't know how long you've been at Finovate, but what have you learned and what have you grown in so that you can be a better advisor, so that you can be someone that can think quickly on your feet and able to find these nuanced solutions for some of these companies?
So my personal journey started at, became a chartered accountant and was in the audit space like most of chartered accountants. And it kind of came to a deadline. I needed to get outside of audit and moved into the advisory space. And I think the thing that I've learned the most with regards to working with business owners is starting to think like them. And seeing the same problems, same kind of discussion points. And at the end of the day, you become so comfortable with regards to what you're saying to the client. You start becoming really good with commercials and deal making and being able to spot the opportunities and where you can really unlock value. And then what I've also seen and kind of learned over the years is being able to quantify that value in a number. And then it becomes very easy to have a conversation on the commercial side because you understand the value that can be unlocked. And now you can just tie that back with your kind of the price of the service you deliver.
Value unlocked, one brand, many voices. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to Finovate? How have you integrated that into your team, into your own professional life? Can you expand on that?
So, yeah, I think the idea was to involve our staff to understand the internal side of Finovate and kind of the strategy and where we want to go and where's our heart. And the big reason for that is to actually make staff part of our strategy. And that's why the team is also here to kind of explain their stories, what they see with clients, because they're part of their success. So being able to tell a success story of a client is a success for Finovate.
I'd like to know to a founder out there that is longing and yearning for some of these insights, what would you leave? What would you leave with someone that is a little bit confused and it's a sort of starstruck and almost frantically panicking? What would your advice be? Not from just an advisor from Finovate, but from Robert Bougas himself. What would you leave with someone today?
I think a clarity. I think a lot of the times the staff at Finovate don't really see their kind of future and what that looks like, where they want to be. And it's important from a leader's perspective to sit with them, kind of give clarity, kind of ask the questions for them as well. Like where do they want to grow? What is of interest? What is of not? And try to position them in the seat where you can see their personal development aligns with where they want to go. So I think that I would say that too.
That's amazing. Got one last question for you. If there's one maybe lingering story, one more that you maybe have that you just want to share where you felt like you've transformed someone's life, you've actually transformed a business's trajectory. Is there one more short story that you can share with us? Maybe that is relevant for today.
So I'll tell a story on if you think of the 5C diagnostics on cash flow, and I think another one would be capital. So on the cash flow side, we have a business. It's a service business. They in the engineering construction space. So work on projects, and when we come to the cash flow, it's very important to understand the working capital cycles. So for those that don't know, that's your debtor days. How quickly are you recovering your invoices and turning that invoices into cash? And obviously your supplier days. So that's the vice versa, which is how quickly do you need to pay your bills? So in the perfect world, you would want your debtor days to be as low as possible and your supplier days as high as possible, so that you get the cash quicker than you need to pay it. So that's a deep dive into the working capital cycles. That's a lot where the cash flow analysis sits in, and kind of being able to identify these tools of how you can improve cash flow. And this is always a kind of a topic of discussion with clients. So you have different kind of tools. You can use discounts. You want to obviously get the cash up front, and you're going to sacrifice some margin, but that's fine. Cash is at the end of the day quite king. And then the other one is maybe to play on the risk side, which is not always great, but being able to give them advice to actually discharge interest on suppliers not paying on time. So we had a client in this engineering space doing projects, and their working capital days was just based on their industry was quite bad. So they have like 60 days for customers, and their suppliers are pretty much 15 to 30 days. So you can imagine cash flow is a problem. So in their case, when they do projects, they ask for a 20% upfront payment, and then they need to service the project. So that's buying material, paying labor, and then they get paid on milestones. So we looked at the discounts, the risk side of charging interest, etc. But it wasn't really a one that shifts the needle. And the one that kind of really shifted the needle was actually looking at invoice or debtors factoring, which is a quite interesting tool. And that is where you actually get a third party provider. You actually give your invoice from the customer to that person. That person buys the invoice at a discount of, let's say, a 10% discount. So you get 90% of what the actual invoice said, but you get your cash up front. And on their side, the third party provider then needs to recover that invoice on his own terms. At the end of the day, it's a sacrifice on margin, but like I said, cash is king. You need to be able, some businesses needs the cash. Otherwise, that business had to use other projects' cash to fund a different project, which in their case, it wasn't kind of realistic and very difficult to manage. So we came with that solution, looked into it, got a guy to help us as well. And at the end of the day, it is a great success story just to be able to unlock that basic, something he doesn't see before.
Yeah. And
being able to now run projects, yes, less rate, a little bit smaller margin, but at least he got the cash up front. So that was a story on the cash flow.
Okay, Robert, so thank you so much for sharing a little bit about the commercial and on the cash front. Is there maybe another C in the 5C that you have a story attached to that you'd like to share about?
Yes, thanks, Ross. The last one I would like to tell a story is about capital. So just some context on what is capital. So if you ask a client where he wants to grow and how he wants to grow, he will tell you from 10 million to 50 million. So inside of capital, you actually ask like, how are you going to fund that growth? Okay, so that's the one question. Another question that comes in capital is your valuation. Really understanding the certain levers in commercials that you're going to kind of draw attention to. How does that impact the valuation? And I remember these business owners, they work blood, sweat and tears on an asset they're trying to grow. And most of them do not know the value of that asset they're growing. So based on the 5C diagnostics, I told you there was an average score of 46, 47%. Quite interesting that capital was actually the one that's the lowest when clients come to us and fill out 5C diagnostics, which is a quite interesting fact. And then with regards to the last probably question in capital, and that is your corporate structure. Being able to use the structure for tax efficiency, using the Income Tax Act to your benefit, and actually creating wealth for you as a business owner and for your family at the end of the day. So the story I would like to tie back is actually a restructure that we did for a client. So this was a company that exports kind of product from South Africa to the rest of the world. Quite a big business. They do about 200 million in revenue, and the valuation was about 50 million. So at the end of the day, we work with business owners to really understand their personal balance sheet. What does that look like? So this guy obviously owns an asset of 50 million, and he has some properties as well. At the end of the day, I think his personal estate was about 80 million rand. And you actually ask a very awkward question, but do you understand, you ask the client, do you really understand, like, in the unfortunate event of passing away, what does that cost of death look like? And it's sometimes an awkward question to ask, but it's a relevant question. And the guys were like, no, they have no idea. So at the end of the day, it's actually the cost that your family needs to carry. Because now you can imagine on a 80 million estate value, and being able to do a restructure and show what is the estate value or the cost of death actually decreases if you do this restructure, and being able to quantify the service you're doing on an exact value. So after the kind of the calculations and what we're going to do and the plan that we kind of presenting to the client, we did the cost of the death calculation, and it came to about 30 million. So you got an 80 million estate, and in the unfortunate event of passing away, your estate actually becomes net of taxes 50 million. So obviously for those that don't know, you got 3 trigger points when it comes to this. The first one is the estate duty tax, which is about between 20 and 25%. You got capital gains tax, which is the max at 18% on top of that. And then you got your third point, which is your executive fees, which is 3.5% on gross assets. So those are all costs that occur when you kind of pass away. So we did this calc and showcased, okay, we might not be able to take 30 million off the table here, but we can take your 30 million cost to 10 million. So that's a 20 million saving in taxes when we do this restructure for them. So a lot of the times business owners will feel like a restructure might feel like a lot of money. This is a lot of investment that I need to put in, but they can't quantify the value that this brings. It's like any other decision make. If you need to make a decision, you need to be able to back it with data. So if you got 2 options, what does the data tell me? What is the return on investment on this decision I'm making? And this is where it comes, where we kind of show that value. Like, yes, we're going to do this restructure. It's going to cost you, for argument's sake, 500,000 Rand. But the return on investment is 20 million Rand. So that's a great investment. And it triggers once it's actually put in place. Then it's protected. So yeah, that's the last story I wanted to tell on capital.
So would you, sorry, just to wrap up there, would you say that is generally speaking business owners' biggest blind spot? Understanding valuation and capital. Would you agree that is the biggest blind spot that you've seen?
That is what the data is telling us. Yeah, it's the lowest kind of average score that we've seen. And like if you're asking the questions on the 5C, that's your valuation and that's your corporate structure. That's also one of the topics that the most excites them, because I want to know, what is this asset that I'm building on, having blood, sweat and tears on this. I'm working day and night. What is the actual value of that?
I think that's incredible. I think for you to be someone and to be a business that can bring clarity to other businesses, to be able to empower other people to move forward in their space and in their various industries, I think that's incredible. And that is really unlocking value. So Robert, thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you for your insights. It was great to have you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ross.
Great. My next guest is Yanga Tolashe. He is the team lead and Fractional Financial Manager at Finovate, and he plays a massive role behind the scenes. What is actually happening in Finovate that is helping them deliver at high levels? We're talking systems, infrastructure, technological innovation, operational execution across South Africa and the UK. And what I really love about this conversation is that it explores something that most businesses overlook. And it's those invisible systems that either support growth or are maybe crumbling under pressure when the business is expanding at a rapid rate. So, Yanga, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. Welcome to Founder Value Unlocked.
Thank you very much for having me as well. I'm excited to speak with you.
Yeah. So Yanga, just for me, give a brief description of your role at Finovate and then what a typical day looks like for you in office.
Yeah, so I'm a team leader and a fractional financial manager, mainly the financial manager part. So financial manager for multiple clients. On a day-to-day, it would be handling their finances. I would be managing a management accountant that's under me, and together we would both be reporting to the CFO. So whether I'm doing reporting or it's a lot of Excel, and it's a lot of modeling, and it's just ensuring that what the business is doing is actually reflecting correctly in the accounting books, and it actually makes sense for where they're going in the future.
That's incredible. It's nothing that I would be able to do. Far, far from anything I'd ever be able to do.
Yeah.
But I'm very, very happy, and I admire you a lot. And I'd like to know a little bit more about your personal story with Finovate, and what you've learned over the last couple of years. I know Finovate was your first, I would say, gig, but it was your first opportunity after being a graduate to then work in the corporate space.
Yeah.
And so I want to know, what have you learned? What have you picked up inside Finovate and the culture that is basically very, very personal to you now, that you can look back on and be like, wow, I'm tracking the progress. This is incredible.
Yeah. I think for me, the reason why I went to Finovate is that when I actually had the interview with Franch, our director, is I wanted to be flexible in what I was doing. I didn't want to just do finance. I was interested in systems, in operations, and I wanted to have that autonomy to be able to switch between different roles and responsibilities. And I think Finovate gave me that autonomy. Obviously, I had to earn it. Nothing comes free. They gave me that autonomy. And I think what I learned, which was so valuable, because I learned that you need to show your worth. You need to, stick to a decision and say, hey, I'm going to be doing this for the next few months. I want to give it my all. And then from there, you can reflect and say, am I good at this or not? Am I actually contributing to the people that I want to help? Or do I need to pivot? And I think I had like 3 or 4 different roles in my 4 years at Finovate. And in each time, they allowed me, the room to make those decisions, obviously in collaboration with them, to identify what works best for the company. But I've learned the ability to not be so fixated on what am I doing for the rest of my life. Let's focus on this particular chapter and let's try to get the most out of it, and let's see how it improves or impacts the next chapter in your life.
That's incredible. Before we get to the insurmountable amount of people that you've helped and that you've rescued from bad situations, and your systems and your operations that you've helped to innovate, I want to get to this definition of success. I asked Robert the same question. What is your definition of success? And then also, what is Finovate's definition of success? And do the two tie together?
Yeah. Personally, I think what always drives me is my ability to make meaningful contributions to the people that I'm working with or for. So that could be like staff or my colleagues, or that could be the clients. I want to produce work where it actually helps them, or they see that, okay, I can actually work with this. I can do something with this. It's not just, I'm not just pushing numbers in the back just for the sake of it, or earning a salary because I need to live. I'm actually doing something that's going to contribute to their life. And I think for Finovate, it is that you say this podcast is about, value unlocked. And that's what we strive. We want to work with companies that want to grow, and we want to help them do that in a sustainable way. That's where that stewardship comes in. So we want to, I think that's what I see Finovate's success is, helping SMEs grow in a sustainable way and help them add value to South Africa's economy.
I wonder if you could highlight a couple of those instances and stories that you're talking about where you have played a really, really big factor or you've influenced on some level. I know you've mentioned a couple of stories beforehand, but I'd like you to highlight one of them, and then you can even link that to what you've learned, and how you've grown. But is there any specific client story that stands out to you within the role that you now occupy, that you're proud of and that you look back on with a lot of gratitude?
Yes, there is. I think what's actually cool, even though it's actually a UK client, they've got stores in Southwest and Central London, they mainly employ South Africans. So whether it be South Africans that were already living in London or England, or they were actually just they brought them over on a nice visa. So the story was around helping them get financial visibility and clarity in the operations of their stores and how well they were actually performing. If you were looking at the profit margins beforehand, they knew how well the company was doing overall, but they had 12 stores and they could never actually tell which one was the most profitable. They could see the revenue, they could see the cash in the bank, but at the end of the day, what matters for the owners is what's left in the bank after you pay the salaries. And it was also important for them to manage the staff. If you think you have 12 stores, that's at least 12 managers, and then there's still people that work in those stores. You need numbers and data to kind of guide your decision making on what to change or what to improve on. And they didn't have that. So from the outset, it was important for Finovate to work with the owner, work with the key management to identify how each store is supposed to perform, which costs should they be incurring, which numbers should they be hitting. And once we got that, we could then model the accounting to ensure that when costs were being incurred, it was being allocated to the right store. Because it's a big company, the buying might be central. So there's a warehouse or there's a butcher or whatever, but all that stock, or because they're in the food and beverage industry, that needs to go to the respective store. So it's then on the manager's side to make sure they manage that well and they actually order on time and they make the right profit margins. Now, the owner would need to make buying decisions, but they never could see what was happening. So in a collaboration or being led by one of our CFOs on the client, we then built a framework on, okay, this is the type of company that it is. We compared it to ShopRite, excuse me, and we knew that the company had to perform in this, or the stores had to perform in a particular way. And once we were able to do the accounting, make sure things were accounted for correctly, we could then show the client, hey, this store is actually doing really well, and this is why. This manager's got cost control really well. They order at the right time. And it then became easy for the client to reward that manager and say, hey, you're doing a great job. Here's a bonus, or here's an incentive. We actually want to give you options in the company because we see a future for you here. Or if someone or a store wasn't doing well, they were able to allocate more resources to identify what's going on here. Is it just, something wrong with the footfall? People aren't coming to the particular area, or do I actually need to spend more time upskilling this manager? And I think what was really cool was that that was the first time that I saw you could use data to actually make a more informed decision and change the direction of someone's life, and as well as your life as well, because the company would perform better and have more profits.
Yeah. So I was going to ask now, what role does data play in some of these stories? Because I can imagine that the extraction and that the capturing of that data can change things formidably, can change things incredibly.
Yeah.
And so when was that moment where they had this almost aha light bulb? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What did that look like? And what did it look like for you guys at Finovate? What did it look like for them? What was that communication like? I'd like to get an insight into that.
Yeah, I think for them, the owner was operating on gut feel. So they just knew the business, and that works. I mean, it's a 20-year-old business.
Gut feel is generally the best way.
Yeah.
But you can't do it without metrics.
Yes,
yeah.
And you can't scale a company on gut feel because if something happens to you, no one else has that gut feel. So the big aha for her was, oh, okay, there's like a blueprint to what's happening. There's actually numbers that inform my gut feel. So people don't have to come to me for everything. They've got the numbers and they know what we are aiming for, so they can manage their staff based on the numbers, and they could actually have visibility on what is happening inside the company. She would be able to, or the owner would be able to identify, okay, this is why maybe there's a huge turnover at this particular store because the numbers are showing this. And all of a sudden, she was being validated by the numbers and not just by her thoughts.
Yeah.
Especially if you're running the company alone, you actually need that support. And in this case, the numbers provided the support on, yes, this decision was wrong or right.
Yeah.
And that was huge for that owner, and they would be able to actually step away slightly from the business because they knew that the management had the firepower to manage their stores well, and the staff as well.
So what specific role did you play in that process? What was your specific mandate?
Yeah.
And what did you contribute directly to that process?
Yeah. So as I said, I worked with the CFO. So he defined the vision of what this would look like. They understood the business model really well, and they knew that, regardless of what the owner is saying or what the numbers are currently showing us, this is what each store is supposed to look like. And my job was to go into the accounting, look at what was done previously, apply accounting principles, and ensure that when things were happening in real life, I would then have to allocate them correctly, either to the right cost item or to the right location. So I had to spend time understanding the business, understanding the processes that the internal team had. And I had to, inform them, hey, like, this is the new process. You can't, for example, send a bill. It's not going to be a very exciting example. You can't send a bill without this information, because then we don't know where to allocate it. Even though that's what they were used to for many years, we had to say, we need this disclosure so that we know exactly where this is going. And over time, you can build in systems that just everyone that works in that particular store, they know that this is the right way to do things.
Yeah. And you're obviously now leading a team as well.
Yeah.
And so you've worked directly with some of these clients directly.
Yes.
So I want to first ask, like, what has been surprising for you if you look at the South African and at the UK clientele, and like the environments that they are operating? Has something quite shocked you, and has something surprised you? Firstly.
Yeah.
And then also, maybe first answer that, and then we'll get to the second question.
Yeah, I think for the UK clientele, they move a lot faster than we do in South Africa, or at least with the clients that I had in South Africa. And the owner, she was really on top of the numbers, and luckily they had a finance background. But what was really surprising is how much they value quick decision making, and being able to make decisions on the spot, and then over time being able to change that methodology with the information that you've gathered. So yes, you're making decisions on the spot, but you have the data to back it up with, and you are pivoting. So if something doesn't work, you quickly do something else, but you're constantly moving at a fast pace. My experience, that's been the biggest difference, and it forced me to move a lot faster when I was dealing with my own clients as well, which I think they appreciated, because, if I say I'm going to do something, I either do it immediately or the next day. It's not going to happen, a week's time. And not everyone will do this, but I will stay up late because I've now made this commitment that you're going to have this today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's even shaped me as well, and how I interact with my clients and colleagues.
Yeah. So I would love to know, since it shaped you so much, obviously you would have gotten good feedback. So I'd love to hear about the feedback that you've had personally for you and your style of leadership and all the great things that you've done, but then implementing that into your team as well, like into people that are now looking to you to guide and to show and to be an example. Like, speak a little bit into that as to Finovate's cultural identity, and how that is then exercised and communicated to people underneath you, and then what all of these experiences you've had has shaped and molded you.
Yeah, so I think what has been shared with me is that people believe that I'm reliable. I've said that I will do something, I do it, and I own it as much as I can. To some degree, it's a downfall because I'm unable to, or my ability to actually ask for help isn't that great, because I just want to, fulfill it to the best of my ability. So it's that extreme ownership. And I think for me, an important thing, as I said earlier, is autonomy. But you can't have autonomy if you don't know how to manage yourself. And what I've pushed onto team members that I've had is that you need to be able to manage yourself and not rely on me to guide you on which decisions to make or how to interpret the data that you're seeing in your reports. So the questions that I ask in team meetings, it's to guide the person to kind of ask those same questions when they're alone looking at the data, or even just get the answers by themselves instead of just me giving them the answers.
Yeah.
So that self-management is definitely something that I'm an advocate for. Like, you need to be able to operate by your own devices if you need be. Obviously, you need someone to guide you, and you need assistance, you need mentorship, but you need to be able to manage yourself.
Yeah. It's a lot about asking the right questions, which Rob also alluded to.
Yes.
Asking the right questions for yourself, and then also developing a culture and cultivating a culture where people are asking these right questions. And so what I think one of my last questions for you is going to be, why are so many businesses not asking the right questions, and where do you see patterns in the failure of these infrastructural systems and these operations? Where do you generally see that?
Yeah, so I think what they do know is the end in mind. Or in most cases, they know why they've created this business. They've spotted a gap in the market or whatnot. I think what happens sometimes is the lack of knowledge. So it's not about, you just don't know what to ask because you don't know enough about something. And I think what we are able to do is, because this is our speciality, we know the content really well. We are knowledgeable about finances, but we also spend a lot of time understanding why did the owner create this business? What's the overall purpose? And once we understand, their purpose of existence, we're then able to marry that versus how they're currently behaving or what the numbers are showing, and then ask questions that kind of uncover what's stopping them from achieving their goals, or why they're actually so good at achieving their goals, and how can you make that scalable so that everyone in your team can do that. Yeah. So it's for me, it's a combination of the knowledge, but also the purpose, overall purpose.
Yeah. So without giving away too much of that knowledge, and without actually exercising your services on this platform, give founders listening, give business owners, give people that are sort of maybe stuck with with infrastructural problems, just leave them with one solid tip, one cemented thing that you can stand by, maybe even just a bit of advice, nothing crazy, that you've seen become a problem, pop up often. What do you want to leave with someone that's listening to this podcast right now, if anything?
Yeah, so I think a good infrastructure enables you to perform and do the things that you love at an efficient pace. You want to move quickly. And if your infrastructure is constantly stopping you, or it takes very long for you to get from point A to point B, it's probably a good sign that your infrastructure is holding you back. So it would be a big tip for me is to map out the steps that you need to take to fulfill a particular task, and then look at where your infrastructure adds more roadblocks in that process. And then from there, you've actually diagnosed the problem. Often people will blame the system, right? But then they don't understand why the system is failing. Sometimes it's not the system, sometimes it's the people as well. But once you do that diagnosis, you can understand, okay, it's the infrastructure, but this is why it's the infrastructure. This is what's missing in this infrastructure. So the next time that I look for something new, I'm not only looking for a new thing because, I just want to move on to something else, but I actually understand the fundamentals that will improve my current situation. So you do need to step back to understand, why can't I finish a goal? Why is it taking me so long? And then from there, also understand your current infrastructure as well.
Great. So then my last question to you, very, very last question, is why is Finovate the answer to helping businesses gain better insights and make better decisions financially? Why Finovate?
I think for Finovate, we, as Robert has said, we're not just accountants. Our focus is unlocking value with the client. So when we do meet with our clients, we're not talking about how good are your books. We're talking about what do you want to do with this business. And from there, we're then able to understand or work with the client to determine how should your finances change in order to meet your overall goal. So it's not just about the books. It's about what you want to do with the time that you are investing in your business and the output that you'd want at the end of the day.
That's incredible. Yanga, thank you so much for this conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really, really love hearing your insights and your expertise. So thank you, and I'm hoping to see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
Fantastic. My final guest today is Jan Hendrik Basson, and he's the Fractional CFO and team lead at Finovate. He works directly with founders and leadership teams, and he helps businesses navigate some of the most important financial decisions they could ever make. And I think what makes this conversation really special is that it's about trust and what happens when the right businesses find the right financial partner at the right stage of growth and what can happen from that partnership. So, Jan Hendrik, welcome to Founder Value Unlocked.
Thanks, Ross. Yeah, what a privilege to be here.
Cool. So we're going to jump right in. You've now seen two of your associates sit in that chair the same way that you're sitting in that chair. And I've asked them a couple of questions. I'm going to ask a very, very basic question to start off with. Just give us a brief description as to what your role looks like at Finovate, what your day-to-day can entail.
Yeah, so I think, my role is I can let's say divide my role in kind of 3 layers. So one is being a fractional CFO for clients. So that is my main job and what I do most of the day. And then, secondly, I'm also a team lead. So just leading financial teams in Finovate, guiding them inwardly in Finovate and also with clients. And then also a bit involved, let's call it internal in Finovate, where we work on, let's say, the operations, the strategy, what we are building. But the most of my day is as a CFO consultant, where I sit with business owners and just try and get in their minds and try and understand, like, how are they thinking, what are they thinking about, and just building with them as the CFO to try and shape the story of the business and just translate difficult financial jargon sometimes into easily terms that's easy to understand.
I can't wait to get into it. I'm very, very excited to hear what you have to say today. You're obviously a very strong, big, intimidating man, but I'm sure that there's a gentle side to you that understands some of the complexities and nuances behind people's brains as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing that. But I'm going to ask the same question that I asked the rest. Success for Jan Hendrik. What does success look like for you, if you could define it? And then how would you define success within Finovate and within your role?
I think, firstly, for me personally, success is a relative term, and I think everyone looks at it differently. But for me, if I can define it, it's a difficult thing, but it's let's say, to get to a place where I'm in a position to help people around me on a day-to-day basis in any shape and form. So that, the main thing there is to be in a position to help people and take that to clients, where I'm working with clients and kind of helping them so that they can win. Because, if our clients win at the end of the day and they are happy, that's when Finovate also wins. So it's a lot on helping clients, taking ownership with clients, and guiding them and helping them.
It's brilliant. Today we're talking about client wins and we're talking about these success stories. So I can't wait to hear some of the interesting stories that you have to share. But before we go into some of them, I just want to ask this question, because I think you deal with these with people like this that will be going through the pressures of being a business owner. So maybe you can talk a bit into what are some of the misconceptions, or what do people not really understand about the pressure it is to be a business owner, and what problems are these people currently facing?
I think if I can first just say what I've experienced is running a business is tough. It's really difficult. I think it's one of the most difficult things to do in this world. If you look at it from a career perspective, it's a really challenging thing to do. There's a lot that goes into running a business. And when you speak to business owners, at the end of the day, they have a lot more worries that, let's say, someone that just works there. So a founder, they're thinking about growing the business. They're thinking about cash flow. They're thinking about regulation. They're thinking about, how do they grow this business? I think there's a lot that goes into a founder's, let's call it thinking box and what they need to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, I think having, like with most things in life, having a good partner to try and guide you and steward you along the way, just try and bring clarity in your day-to-day operations. Maybe as a founder, you sometimes just focus on one thing that you think is super important. And as let's say a fractional CFO or a finance partner, you look at blind spots and see where this person might be missing crucial, let's call it problem areas that will come at the later stage to face them, if we can put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've got a large vault of stories that you can pull from, but I'd like to highlight one or two of those stories that you've seen these guys that you have determined to be experiencing a lot of harsh realities and difficulties, and they're thinking about a lot. They've got a lot of people that they have to worry about, they're responsible for. So maybe there's one or two stories that you can recall where you actually helped carry that burden for them, where you specifically came in or your team came in, and maybe there's a success story, a client story that you can highlight for us, one or two.
Yeah, no, there's a couple of stories I can think about, but one story I think that really resonates with me was we had a client. It's still a client. It's actually a good client now, but the client is it's in the e-commerce space, so they sell a lot of products online. Buy products locally and then they sell it online. So the client came to us and they didn't really have a lot of financial insights in the business. They were, as founders sometimes do, that they run blind. they run from the bank statements and what they see in front of them and what balance is in the bank account. So yeah, the client came to us and he was like, "No, here's the." And they only sell the clients in the retail, in the e-commerce space, and they only sell local, like online. So yeah, they're going about their business in South Africa and growing. And the client came to us. He said, no, he has this opportunity to go to the UK, and he wants to know, well, is this a good decision? Like, what should he think about? There's a lot to think about when you want to go cross-border. Never mind building only in South Africa. So the client came to us and he's like, okay, this is the situation. We're considering going to the UK. And we was like, okay, well, let's dig a bit, yeah, and try and understand the business. Let's look into the commercials. We asked basic questions like, okay, do you even know what your product is costing you at this point in time? And they couldn't tell us. We was like, okay, do you have an idea of how you're going to finance this? They're also not sure. So that's where we really had the opportunity. It gave us a nice opportunity to say, okay, the founder is not sure about a lot of things. So let's start. And what I think a lot of people have spoke about the 5C on the podcast, but let's work through the season and break it down to see like what we can discover here. So we did a lot of work on the commercials to try and understand the product offering of the client. What is the costing profile? What is the cost structure of the business? How will they set up to go to the UK, and what should they consider? And we went through the whole exercise to work out potential. The client was ready to pull the trigger. Like, they had partners in the UK. They had setups in the UK. They were already figuring out like how are they going to do it. And we said, okay, no, let's just check and see what's happening
before we go full
before
steam
we
ahead.
go, like, because it's not a cheap exercise to just go to the UK and see what's happening there. We did a whole exercise, kind of modeled out the decision with the client and with the different partners, and that was actually the first time where the client actually also got like a sense of the margins and what is happening in the business. And as we presented our findings, and we were leaning towards, we don't think it's such a good idea to go now. It's possible, but you're going to pay a lot of price. You're going to pay a lot of, let's call it school fees upfront now. So let's first try and delay the decision and get a better baseline in South Africa. So the client's like, okay, now he understands his decision. And actually, he considered it like a few months after we told him we don't think it's such a good idea, because we looked at the data, we looked at the commercials, we looked at how he's going to finance this expansion, because he needs to, let's say, move stock to the UK. It's a big move. And the client, so the client eventually decided, okay, no, he's not going to pull the trigger now. He's going to wait. He's like, okay. And just a couple of months later, the client came to us and just said, like, listen, guys, I think you saved my business. That would not have been a good move to go to the UK. So I think that is where, we really added value to this client. I mean, the client's still operating now, and we're building in South Africa, and maybe one day we can go to the UK still.
Once he's ready, that's incredible. And how did you feel after that? Did you feel a sense of accomplishment? Were you sort of proud after being involved in that story?
Yeah, I think it's in these situations where you see that your decisions can have a positive impact on business owners, and it's also where business owners can see the value that we bring and how we can assist them by essentially just working with them day to day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about the unique offering that Finovate offers their clients, and I'm trying to think about your role that you've played, and maybe there's been a part of your journey where you've had to grow and you've had to see what things change quickly. Things are changing, and you've got to be adaptable. And so I'd like to hear a bit about your personal journey in terms of how Finovate is constantly operating at the pace that they operate and how they're offering the solutions, and then maybe where you have had to maybe switch things up a little bit in your own life. Is there a story like that?
Yeah, no, I think definitely there is something that comes to mind. So I used to work sometime I started my career in the audit space. Just auditing financials, auditing, let's call it, medium-sized businesses in South Africa. And in the, let's call it, CA world, there's always sometimes two fences. You sit either in front or in behind. So in audit, we used to, you're very reactive, and you just ask the client, what are they going to do? Basically checking what they're doing is correct or is it wrong. So I was in that, let's call it, and I learned a lot there to try and understand businesses, but I realized I want to be more client facing and be in front of clients, shape decisions, shape the story of the business. Hence also the reason for me to move kind of in the Finovate direction. But when I got to Finovate and I was placed in these different environments and in front of founders and business owners, I realized that it's a complete change in mindset. Like, you are not reactive anymore. You need to shape the decisions. You need to be forward looking. You need to shape the story. You need to tie business goals with operational goals, with financial goals. So that was a big shift for me personally. And I grew a lot in mindset and just how I carry myself on a day-to-day business, on a day-to-day basis.
It's brilliant, and I can really feel and kind of sense that has been a very interesting journey for you, and that it's just going to continue skyrocketing and rapidly improving. And so I want to know how much now, if you think back on the last couple of years or so, how much now of your role is actually interacting with these people face to face, and how much is it actually about maintaining relationships and then helping these people think clearly when they're under pressure, and what do you do to help them think clearly under pressure?
Yeah, I mean, business in general, and especially our business where you don't deal with the physical product, like trust goes a long way. And trust is very important in our business and industry, because like I said, you don't sell a physical product. So you need to build trust before someone will trust you, and basically, work with you. So that is a steep, let's call it, process you need to follow to get to a point where a client will trust you. But when you get to that point, and we have a lot of those clients where they trust us because we've showed our value over time, they really become, like, I want to say, almost like a friend. Like, they call you with most decisions in their company, because they're not sure all the time, and they want to hear from us, like, what do we see from an outsider perspective, from a, let's call it a more numerical perspective sometimes. So yeah, it's really important to build that trust with clients, and then they come to you and they want to work with you. They call you for the meeting. So it really helps. Yeah, it's wonderful to be in this position. Yeah.
That's brilliant. That's very, very cool. And obviously this podcast is called Founder Value Unlocked. And so we're preparing and we're making content, and we're trying to reach people that might not have the access or the ideas or the insights that we have. And we've had many different success stories and client stories. So if you have one more, you can share. But if you don't, what do you want to leave with a founder that is currently sort of stuck? Or maybe they feel stuck. What would you leave with them today after our conversation?
Yeah, I think for founders that feel stuck, what we have seen is, it is let's call it the building journey. It is a lonely journey. It's a hard journey. I think you doubt yourself a lot, but I want to say get in touch with the right partners and the right people that can steward you along the way and help you. That it just lightens your burden. I think that's where Finovate also like to step in, is where people and founders, they feel lonely sometimes, but if you have the right partners and find those right partners, the people are out there. They are there. So if you find them, I think you can really take it to the next step.
That's incredible. So let's say someone partners with Finovate. What can you guarantee? What can Jan Hendrik promise this person that gets in touch with Finovate?
I think firstly, that when that founder gets in touch, they will probably have not a lot of clarity and peace of mind in the decision making of the business. But with Finovate, you would definitely see more clarity in your business decisions. Just get them value adding, let's call it finance function, where you are in front of the wave and not behind the wave all the time. So really, if you come to Finovate, I think you will have that value adding finance function where we can unlock value for you.
Fantasties. Jan Hendrik, ek waardeer jou tyd so baie. Thank you so much for your conversation. It was incredible.
Thank you so much, Ross. I really appreciate it.
There you have it. That is episode 3 of Founder Value Unlocked, where we were celebrating the success stories and the client wins at Finovate. So now, what's the next step? Well, you'll notice that in the description below, there is a link. If you follow that link, you'll be able to take the 5C Diagnostic. That is sure to give you financial clarity as to where you stand as a business. And right after that, you can book a discovery call with Finovate directly. So we'll be sure to see you again soon at Founder Value Unlocked.